I'm Aurora Hernandez Duran, and my client is Mr. X. Mr. X is a 22-year-old male, and he's been attending the Edgar R. Garrett Speech and Hearing Center since September of 2013. He was referred to us by his current caregiver. Mr. X was diagnosed with Fragile X syndrome at 7 years of age. He's the only person in his family who's been diagnosed with Fragile X syndrome. Though his mom is the carrier of the gene, she does not present with any of the characteristics. He was previously diagnosed with an intellectual disability. A significant FMR1 protein expression in his body has helped him to maintain a relatively high level of cognitive functioning. Mr. X's high level of functioning has been a source of frustration for him. He's too high functioning to comfortably interact with many of his disabled peers, but he's too low functioning to comfortably interact with his non-disabled peers. Mr. X describes himself as friendless, and he shared that he has had problems at work due to his pragmatic language issues. He recently lost a job due to these issues. Mr. X demonstrates age-appropriate receptive and expressive language skills. He has a large vocabulary and he enjoys showing it off. However, he has a hard time with social language. He interrupts often, makes inappropriate comments and gestures, and has problems reciprocating in a conversation. Fragile X syndrome is the most common inherited form of intellectual disability. It is the most common single gene disorder known to be associated with autism. Fragile X syndrome occurs in approximately 1 in 4,000 males and 1 in 8,000 females. Mutation in the FMR1 gene causes Fragile X syndrome. The FMR1 gene provides instructions for making a protein called Fragile X mental retardation 1 protein, or FMRP. This protein helps regulate the production of other proteins and plays a role in the development of synapses. Synapses are critical for relaying nerve impulses. Loss or shortage of this protein disrupts nervous system functions and leads to the signs and symptoms of Fragile X syndrome. Very limited neuropathologic information on Fragile X syndrome is available. However, studies have shown that there are significant morphologic changes in the hippocampus and cerebellum in men with Fragile X syndrome. There are also a decreased number of Purkinje cells, which also lack proper orientation. Preferential atrophy of the posterior lobule has also been observed. Fragile X syndrome causes a range of developmental problems, including learning disabilities and cognitive impairments. Usually, males are more severely affected by this disorder than females. Affected individuals usually have delayed development of speech and language by age 2. Most males with Fragile X syndrome have mild to moderate intellectual disability, while about 1/3 of affected females are intellectually disabled. Children with Fragile X syndrome may also have ADHD, and they may have be on the autism spectrum, and they also sometimes have seizures. Most males and about half of females with Fragile X syndrome have characteristic physical features that become more apparent with age, such as a narrow face, large ears, a prominent jaw and forehead, and unusually flexible fingers. There are very many standardized norm-reference formal measures of pragmatic language. However, it is important to use standardized measures to quantify current levels of pragmatic language skills in order to measure meaningful change as therapy progresses. The following tests and procedures were utilized. An oral peripheral exam was performed to determine the size and shape of the oral structures. A hearing screening was performed to identify any hearing deficiencies that may affect his speech. We also performed a comprehensive assessment of spoken language to measure his language processing skills, comprehension, expression, and retrieval in 4 language structure categories: lexical, semantic, syntactic, superlinguistic, and pragmatics. The expressive one-word picture vocabulary test also helped give us an indication of the extent of his vocabulary. And the receptive one-word picture vocabulary helped us determine his ability to understand the meaning of words spoken and name what is depicted on a test plate without content. Part of the therapeutic process, and actually what I consider the most important part, is to demonstrate unconditional positive regard towards Mr. X. Unconditional acceptance and affection is woven through each therapy session. It requires warmth and acceptance of him even when he does something questionable. And this helped him lower his defenses and has allowed us to work with him. Something that we heard from his family and something that he thinks himself is that nobody likes him. And I can only imagine how difficult it must be to walk around thinking that. But once he understood that we liked and accepted him, he stopped trying to commandeer all of the therapy sessions and he allowed us to work with him. Mr. X has a way of dominating conversations, especially if it's something that he's interested in. Therapy activities are designed to help him balance conversational turns with a conversational partner and to maintain the topic of conversation when it is a topic that someone else has initiated. In both cases, we designed therapy to maintain an approximately equal percentage of conversational turns for himself and us, myself and another clinician, his conversational partners. Other activities have sought to help him balance the number of comments and questions that he uses in a conversation. A large percentage of comments in a conversation may indicate that the person is lacking social skills and leads to an unequitable social exchange. Many times, Mr. X dominates conversations by using extensive comments to describe his own thoughts and experience about a topic. We're teaching him to formulate questions, a task which is very difficult for him because he has to find interest in another person. Therapy has also focused on helping him to recognize conversational breakdowns and teaching him how to repair them. To do so, we purposely sabotage conversations by initiating breakdowns in order to see how he responds to them. Sabotaging behaviors have included turning our backs while someone else speaks, walking away during the conversation, or abruptly changing the topic. He must then identify where the breakdown occurred, and then we discuss how to repair those breakdowns. Therapy sections have included structured conversational activities, conversational games, modeling, and role-playing. We often videotape Mr. X in role-playing activities. He enjoys role-playing appropriate and inappropriate behaviors and enjoys identifying appropriate and inappropriate conversational skills. He shows a great deal of improvement evidenced by increased ability to sustain eye contact, an increased ability to engage in reciprocal conversations, and an ability to self-correct inappropriate behavior. All in all, it's been a wonderful experience working with Mr. X.